There is a cage that holds more people than any prison ever built. It cannot be seen, it cannot be touched, yet it controls lives in silence. This cage is made of thoughts. From the moment you begin to understand the world, you are taught what is possible and what is not. You are told to be realistic. You are told to stay within limits. You are told who you are before you even discover it yourself. At first, these words seem harmless. They come from parents-teacher society. They are often spoken with care, but over time, they shape the way you see yourself. A child begins life without limits. A child does not question ability. A child tries, fails, learns, and tries again. But slowly that freedom fades. You begin to compare yourself with others. You begin to fear mistakes. You begin to avoid what feels difficult. And without realizing it, you start building your own cage. You say, I am not smart enough. You say, I am not confident. You say, I cannot do this. These are not facts. These are beliefs repeated until they feel real. Most people never question these beliefs. They accept them. They live within them. They shape their entire future around them. Years pass and potential remains unused. Dreams are reduced to safe choices. Goals are adjusted to fit comfort. Possibilities are ignored because they seem out of reach. But here is the truth. The limits you feel are not always real. They are often learned. Your mind has been trained to see boundaries where none exist. It has been conditioned to avoid risk and protect comfort. This is not weakness. This is programming. And what is learned can be unlearned. A limitless mind is not about ignoring reality. It is about understanding it clearly. It is about knowing the difference between real constraints and imagined ones. It is about recognizing that growth is always possible. This journey is not easy. Breaking mental barriers requires effort. It requires honesty. It requires stepping into discomfort. But the reward is freedom. Freedom to think differently. Freedom to act boldly. Freedom to create a life that is not defined by fear. In this book, you will not find empty promises. You will find truth. You will learn how beliefs shape your actions. You will understand why fear holds you back. You will discover how to train your mind to grow instead of shrink. This is not about becoming someone else. This is about becoming fully yourself. The version of you that exists without limitation. The version of you that acts with purpose. The version of you that refuses to stay small. Your potential is not fixed. Your future is not written. The only question is, will you continue living inside the invisible cage? Or will you step beyond it and discover what you are truly capable of? Chapter 1. The Myth of Limitation. Limitation feels real because it has been repeated for so long. It feels natural to believe there are boundaries around your ability. It feels logical to assume that some people are meant for more while others are meant for less. But what feels real is not always true. Most limits are not discovered, they are taught. From the beginning, you are placed into systems that measure and compare. You are told where you stand and what you are worth. Over time, these measurements begin to define you. A low score becomes a belief. A failure becomes an identity. A weakness becomes a permanent label. You stop seeing yourself as someone who can grow. You start seeing yourself as someone who is fixed. This is where the myth begins. The idea that your abilities are set. The idea that intelligence is permanent. The idea that talent is something you either have or do not have. These ideas are accepted without question. But they do not reflect reality. Human ability is not fixed. It is developed. Your brain is not a static object. It is constantly changing, adapting, and learning. Every time you practice something new, you build connections. Every time you repeat an action, you strengthen those connections. Every time you challenge yourself, you expand what you are capable of. This means limitation is often nothing more than a lack of exposure, effort, or time. Yet people rarely see it this way. They try once and stop. They struggle once and assume they cannot improve. They fail once and decide they are not meant for it. This pattern creates the illusion of limitation. It is not that growth is impossible. It is that growth was never fully attempted. The truth is uncomfortable. Growth requires patience. It requires discomfort. It requires persistence. And most people avoid these things. It is easier to say I cannot than to say I will try again. It is easier to accept limits than to challenge them. But ease does not create progress. Progress comes from repetition, from effort, from resilience. When you understand this, you begin to question everything you once believed about yourself. You realize that many of your limits were never tested properly. They were assumed. You begin to see that ability is built step by step, not given all at once. You begin to understand that failure is not proof of incapability. It is part of development. Example 1. A student struggles in a subject for many years. He believes he is not intelligent in that area. He avoids it and performs poorly again and again. One day he decides to approach it differently. He studies consistently, he asks questions, he practices daily. At first, progress is slow. He still makes mistakes, but he does not stop. Over time, patterns begin to make sense. Concepts become clearer. Confidence starts to grow. Within a year, his performance improved significantly. What changed was not his natural ability. What changed was his approach and persistence. Example 2. A person believes they are not creative. They compare themselves to others and feel inferior. They stop trying to create because they fear judgment. Later, they begin practicing a creative skill regularly. They allow themselves to make imperfect work. They focus on improvement instead of comparison. Slowly, their ability develops. Ideas flow more easily. Their confidence increases. They realize creativity was never absent. It was undeveloped. The myth of limitation survives because it is rarely challenged. People accept their first result as their final definition. They do not give themselves enough time to grow. But time combined with effort changes everything. You are not limited in the way you have been led to believe. You are in a process that continues as long as you are willing to engage with it. The moment you stop seeing yourself as fixed, you begin to see possibilities. The moment you stop accepting limits, you begin to expand them. Your potential is not a boundary. It is a direction. And that direction depends on what you choose to do next. Chapter 2. The power of belief. Belief is quiet, yet it controls everything. It shapes how you see yourself. It shapes how you respond to challenges. It shapes the effort you are willing to give. But your beliefs define your actions. If you believe something is impossible, you will not give it full effort. If you believe something is possible, you will keep trying even when it feels difficult. This is why belief is powerful. It does not change the world instantly, but it changes how you move within the world. Many people underestimate how deeply belief affects them. They think they are making rational decisions, but often they are simply following patterns built by repeated thoughts. If you have told yourself for years that you are not capable, that belief becomes automatic. You stop questioning it. You act in ways that confirm it. This creates a cycle. You believe you cannot, so you try less. You get poor results, and those results strengthen your belief. The cycle continues until it feels like truth. But it is not truth. It is reinforcement. The same cycle can work in the opposite direction. If you believe growth is possible, you will continue even when progress is slow. You will see mistakes as part of learning. You will stay consistent. Over time, your results improve. And those results strengthen your belief. This creates a different cycle. One that leads to progress instead of limitation. Belief does not mean blind confidence. It does not mean ignoring reality. It means choosing to see potential where others see barriers. It means understanding that ability can be developed. When you adopt this mindset, your behavior changes naturally. You become more patient. You become more persistent. You become more willing to face difficulty. These changes may seem small at first, but over time, they create massive differences. Example 1. Two individuals begin learning a new skill at the same time. Both struggle in the beginning. Both feel uncertain. One believes that struggle is a sign of inability. The other believes that struggle is part of growth. The first becomes discouraged quickly. They reduce their effort and eventually stop. The second continues practicing. They accept mistakes and keep improving. After months, the difference becomes clear. One remains at the starting point. The other develops real skill. The difference was not talent. It was belief. Example 2. A professional is given an opportunity to lead a project. They feel unprepared and unsure. If they believe they are not capable, they will hesitate, avoid responsibility, and perform poorly. If they believe they can learn and adapt, they will take action, seek guidance, and improve during. The outcome changes based on belief. Not because belief magically creates skill, but because belief influences effort and persistence. Belief is like a lens. It shapes how you interpret every experience. Failure can be seen as proof of weakness, or it can be seen as information for improvement. Difficulty can be seen as a barrier, or it can be seen as a challenge to overcome. The event is the same. The interpretation is different. And interpretation determines response. To build a limitless mind, you must become aware of your beliefs. You must question them. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Is it based on evidence or repetition? Does it help me grow or hold me back? You will find that many beliefs are outdated. They were formed in moments of fear and may no longer serve you. Changing belief is not instant. It requires consistent effort. You replace old thoughts with new ones. You support them with action. You reinforce them with results. Over time, new beliefs become natural. You begin to act with more confidence. You begin to persist longer. You begin to expect growth. And as your belief changes, your reality begins to shift with it. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed the way you engage with it. A limitless mind is built on strong belief. Not belief without effort, but belief that drives effort. When you believe in growth, you give yourself permission, and that is what separates those who stay limited from those who expand beyond every boundary. Chapter 3. Learning without barriers. Learning is the foundation of every form of progress. Without learning, there is no growth. Without growth, there is no change. Yet many people stop learning long before their potential is reached. Not but because they believe learning is limited. They think intelligence is fixed. They think ability is permanent. They think once they struggle, it means they are not meant for it. This belief becomes a barrier. It creates hesitation. It creates fear. It creates avoidance. Instead of moving forward, people stay where they are comfortable. But comfort does not create progress. Learning requires effort. Learning requires patience. Learning requires the willingness to feel uncomfortable. When you begin something new, you will not be good at it. You will feel slow. You will make mistakes. You will doubt yourself. This is not a problem. This is the process. Every skill you see in others was built through repetition. Every confident person was once uncertain. Every expert was once a beginner. The difference is not talent alone. The difference is persistence in learning. Many people approach learning with the wrong expectations. They expect quick results. They expect immediate understanding. They expect perfection early. When these expectations are not met, They become frustrated. They assume they are not capable, and they stop. But real learning does not happen that way. It happens step by step. It happens through practice. It happens through failure and adjustment. When you accept this, you remove one of the biggest barriers: the fear of being a beginner. Being a beginner is not weakness. It is the starting point of growth. When you embrace this idea, your mindset shifts. You stop avoiding challenges. You start seeking them. You stop fearing mistakes. You start using them. You stop rushing the process. You start trusting it. 1. A person decides to learn a new language. At first, everything feels confusing. Words are unfamiliar. Sentences do not make sense. If they expect quick mastery, they will quit. They will say this is too hard. But if they accept that confusion is part of learning, they will continue. They practice daily. They repeat words. They listen and try again. Over time, patterns begin to form. Understanding improves. Communication becomes possible. What once felt impossible becomes natural. Example. 2. A young professional wants to improve public speaking. Each time they speak, they feel nervous. Their voice shakes. Their thoughts feel unclear. At first, they consider avoiding speaking opportunities. It feels easier to stay silent. But instead, they choose to practice. They speak more often. They observe their mistakes. They adjust their approach. With each attempt, they improve slightly. After many repetitions, confidence begins to build. Clarity improves. Fear decreases. They do not become perfect, but they become capable. Learning without barriers means removing the false expectations that hold you back. It means understanding that progress is not always visible immediately. It means trusting that consistent effort creates results over time. Your brain adapts with use. It strengthens with repetition. It becomes more efficient with practice. This is not theory. This is reality. When you engage in learning regularly, you are physically changing your ability. You are building new connections. You are expanding your capacity. But this only happens if you continue. Stopping breaks the process. Avoidance weakens progress. Consistency is what transforms effort into skill. A limitless mind sees learning as a continuous journey, not something that ends after school, not something reserved for certain people. It is a lifelong process. There is always something new to understand. There is always a way to improve. When you remove the barriers to learning, you open the door to endless growth. You begin to see challenges as opportunities. You begin to see effort as investment. You begin to see time as an ally instead of an enemy. And slowly your abilities expand beyond what you once believed possible. Because the truth is simple. You are capable of learning far more than you think. The only requirement is that you do not stop Chapter 4, taking control of your life. It is built through action. You can understand every concept of growth. You can believe in your potential. But if you do not act, nothing changes. Many people wait before they begin. They wait for confidence. They wait for the right time. They wait until they feel ready. But readiness is not something you find. It is something you create through action. The longer you wait, the stronger hesitation becomes. The more you delay, the more difficult it feels to start. Taking control begins when you stop waiting. It begins when you decide to move, even when you feel uncertain. Control does not mean you can change everything around you. There will always be factors outside your influence. There will always be challenges you cannot predict. But there is always something you can control. You can control your effort. You can control your response. You can control your decisions. These small areas of control shape your direction. When you focus on what you cannot control, you feel powerless. When you focus on what you can control, you begin to move forward. This shift is simple but powerful. It changes your mindset from passive to active. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What can I do now?" This question creates action, and action creates change. Many people remain stuck because they believe their situation defines them. They say their background is the reason. They say their environment is the limitation. They say their circumstances cannot change. While these factors are real, they are not absolute. They influence your path, but they do not decide it completely. Your response always plays a role. Two people can face similar situations and create very different. The difference lies in how they respond. Example 1. A person grows up with limited resources. Opportunities are few. Support is minimal. It would be easy to accept limitation. But instead, they focus on what they can control. They use available resources. They learn from free sources. They work consistently. Progress is slow at first, but they continue. Over time, skills develop. Opportunities appear. Their situation begins to change. The environment did not change first. Their actions did. Example 2. Another person faces similar conditions. They feel discouraged. They believe nothing can improve. They stop trying. They avoid effort. They accept their situation as permanent. Years pass with little change. The difference is not the starting point. It is the decision to act. Taking control also means taking responsibility. This does not mean blaming yourself for everything. It means recognizing your role in your progress. It means understanding that your choices matter. When you take responsibility, you gain power. You stop waiting for others to change your situation. You stop relying on external factors. You begin creating your own direction. This is not always easy. Responsibility can feel heavy. It removes excuses. It forces honesty. But it also creates freedom. Because when you accept responsibility, you also accept the ability to change. A limitless mind does not avoid difficulty. It faces it directly. It does not wait for perfect conditions. It creates progress within Every small action matters. Every decision builds momentum. You do not need to change everything at once. You only need to start. Start with what you have. Start where you are. Start with what you can control. Over time, these small actions grow into larger results. Momentum builds. Confidence increases. Direction becomes clearer. Taking control is not a single moment. It is a continuous choice. A choice to act instead of wait. A choice to respond instead of react. A choice to move forward instead of stay still. When you make this choice consistently, you begin to shape your life instead of being shaped by it. And that is the moment where limitation begins to disappear. Because you are no longer controlled by circumstance. You are guided by action. And action is always within your reach. Chapter 5. Overcoming fear and doubt. Fear is one of the strongest forces that keeps people limited. It does not always appear as something obvious. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it hides behind hesitation. Sometimes it feels like logic. You tell yourself you are being careful. You tell yourself you need more time. You tell yourself you are not ready. But often what you are feeling is fear. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of rejection. Fear of the unknown. These fears are natural. Every person experiences them. The difference is not in feeling fear. The difference is in how you respond to it. Most people try to avoid fear. They move away from situations that make them uncomfortable. They stay within what feels safe. At first, this feels like relief, but over time, it creates limitation. The more you avoid something, the more powerful it becomes. The mind begins to treat it as a threat. Confidence decreases. Fear grows stronger. This creates a cycle. Avoidance leads to stronger fear. Stronger fear leads to more avoidance. Breaking this cycle requires a different approach. Instead of avoiding fear, you must face it. Not all at once, not in extreme ways, but step by step. Each time you face something that scares you, you weaken its control. Each time you act despite fear, you build confidence. Confidence is not something you wait for. It is something you build through action. It is the voice that questions your ability. It tells you that you are not good enough. It reminds you of past mistakes. Doubt can feel convincing, because it is based on familiar thoughts. But doubt is not always accurate. It often ignores your potential. It focuses only on your current state. It tells you what you are not, instead of what you can become. If you listen to doubt without question, it will guide your decisions. It will keep you from trying. It will keep you from improving. To overcome doubt, you must challenge it. You must ask, is this thought helping me or limiting me? You must replace it with action. Because action is the strongest response to doubt. When you take action, you gather real evidence. You learn from experience. You prove to yourself that progress is possible. Over time, doubt loses. Example 1. A person wants to start a business. They feel fear of failure. They imagine losing money. They imagine being judged. Because of this, they delay starting. They keep planning, but never act. The fear remains because it is never challenged. Another person feels the same fear, but they decide to start small. They take a simple step. They test an idea. They learn from the result. The process is not perfect. Mistakes happen. But with each step, fear decreases. Confidence begins to grow. The difference is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite it. Example 2. A student fears speaking in front of others. They worry about making mistakes. They worry about being judged. Because of this, they avoid participation. They stay silent. The fear grows stronger. Another student feels the same fear, but chooses to speak even when nervous. At first, it is uncomfortable. Mistakes happen, but they continue. Over time, the fear reduces. Confidence builds. They do not become fearless, but they become capable. Overcoming fear does not mean eliminating it completely. Fear may always exist in some form, but it does not have to control you. You can learn to act with fear instead of being stopped by it. The same is true for doubt. You may still hear that inner voice, but you do not have to follow it. You can choose action instead. A limitless mind understands that fear is part of growth. It sees fear as a signal, not to stop, but to move forward carefully. It recognizes that the things you avoid often hold the greatest opportunities. Growth exists outside comfort. When you stay comfortable, you stay the same. When you face fear, you expand. This expansion is not instant. It happens gradually. Each small step builds strength. Each action builds confidence. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes manageable. And what once felt terrifying becomes normal. The key is consistency. Not one moment of courage, but repeated moments of action. When you continue despite fear and doubt, you begin to break their control. You begin to trust yourself more. And that trust, because once you realize that fear cannot stop you, and doubt cannot define you, there is very little left that can hold you back. Chapter 6. Discipline and consistency. Motivation feels powerful, but it is not reliable. It comes and goes. It rises when you feel inspired and disappears when things become difficult. If your progress depends only on, this is why discipline matters. Discipline is the ability to act even when you do not feel like it. It is the decision to continue even when excitement fades. Consistency is what turns small actions into real results. Many people start strong. They feel motivated. They take action for a short time. But when the initial energy disappears, they slow down. They skip days. They lose focus. Eventually, they stop. This pattern keeps them stuck, not because they are incapable, but because they are inconsistent. Progress does not come from occasional effort. It comes from repeated action over time. Even small efforts matter when they are consistent. A single day of hard work can feel productive, but it is regular effort that creates lasting change. Discipline is not about being perfect. It is about showing up. Some days will feel easy. Some days will feel difficult. Discipline means you continue on both types of days. It removes the need to rely on feelings. You do not wait until you feel ready. You act because you have decided to act. At first this feels difficult. Your mind resists. It looks for comfort. Delay. But each time you follow discipline instead of comfort, you strengthen control. Over time it becomes easier. What once required effort becomes routine. Consistency builds momentum. When you act regularly, you reduce resistance. You create a pattern. You make progress automatic. This is how habits are formed. Habits remove the need for constant decision-making. Instead of asking, "Should I do this today?" you simply do it. This saves energy. It increases efficiency. It keeps you moving forward. Many people underestimate the power of small, consistent actions. They believe they need large effort to see results. But large effort is difficult to sustain. Small effort repeated daily is more effective. Example 1. A person wants to improve physical fitness. They start with intense workouts for a few days. They feel exhausted and stop. Later, they try a different approach. They begin with short regular sessions. They exercise for a limited time each day. The effort feels manageable. They continue without stopping. Weeks turn into months. Strength improves. Energy increases. The progress is steady because the effort is consistent. Example 2. A student wants to improve their knowledge. They study for long hours once in a while. Then they take long breaks. Progress is slow and uneven. Another student studies for a shorter time every day. They review regularly. They stay consistent. Over time, understanding deepens. Memory improves. Performance becomes stronger. The difference is not intelligence. It is consistency. Discipline also means doing what is necessary, not just what is comfortable. Comfort often leads to delay. It encourages distraction. It keeps you in the same place. Discipline pushes you to act even when it feels inconvenient. This does not mean ignoring rest. Rest is important. But rest should support progress, not replace it. Balance is created when you maintain effort while allowing recovery. A limitless mind does not depend on temporary motivation. It builds systems. It creates routines. It sets clear actions. It follows through regardless of mood. This creates stability. When your actions are stable, your progress becomes predictable. You no longer rely on chance. You rely on habit. Over time, this leads to confidence. But because you trust your ability to continue, this trust is powerful. It removes doubt about whether you will act, because you have proven to yourself that you will. Discipline is not a restriction. It is a form of freedom. It frees you from inconsistency. It frees you from hesitation. It frees you from dependence on motivation. Consistency is what turns potential into reality. Without it, even the best intentions fade. With it, even small efforts become significant. You do not need to do everything at once. You only need to do something regularly. That is how progress is built. That is how limits are broken. That is how a limitless mind becomes a real part of your life. Chapter 7. Building a powerful identity. Your actions shape your results, but your identity shapes your actions. Identity is the way you see yourself. It is the story you tell about who you are. This story influences everything. If you see yourself as someone who gives up easily, you will act in ways that confirm it. If you see yourself as someone who is disciplined, you will behave differently. Identity is not fixed. It is built over time. It is formed through repeated thoughts and actions. Many people try to change their results without changing their identity. They focus only on what they do. They ignore how they see themselves. This creates conflict. You may try to act in a new way, but your identity pulls you back to old patterns. For real change to happen, your identity must evolve. This does not mean pretending. It means building evidence. Each action you take becomes proof. When you act with discipline, you create evidence that you are disciplined. When you face fear, you create evidence that you are courageous. When you stay consistent, you create evidence that you are reliable. These small proofs reshape your identity. Over time, the new identity becomes natural. You no longer feel like you are forcing change. You feel like you are acting in alignment with who you are. Many people wait to feel like a different person before they say, "I will be confident, then I will speak." They say, "I will feel ready, then I will begin." But identity does not change before action. It changes because of action. You become by doing. Each action is a vote for the type of person you want to be. If you repeat the same action enough times, it becomes part of your identity. This process requires awareness. You must recognize the current story you believe. You must ask yourself, is this identity helping me grow, or is it keeping me limited? If it is limiting, you must begin to change it, not through words alone, but through behavior. Example 1. A person believes they are not disciplined. They often delay tasks. They avoid effort. This belief becomes their identity. To change it, they start with small actions. They complete simple tasks daily. They follow through even when it feels minor. Each completed action becomes proof. Over time, they begin to see themselves differently. They no longer say, "I am not disciplined." They say, "I am becoming consistent." The identity shifts through repeated behavior. Example: a person believes they are not confident. They avoid speaking in groups. They stay silent even when they have ideas. This reinforces their identity. To change it, they begin taking small risks. They speak in short moments. They share simple thoughts. Each action builds evidence. Slowly, they become more comfortable. Their identity begins to change. They start to see themselves as someone who can express ideas. Identity is powerful because it creates alignment. When your identity supports your goals, your actions become easier. When your identity conflicts with your goals, your actions feel forced. A limitless mind is built on a strong identity. An identity that supports growth. An identity that accepts challenge. An identity that values effort and persistence. This identity is not created in a single moment. It is built daily. Through choices, through actions, through consistency. You do not need to become perfect. You only need to become intentional. Each day you decide what type of person you are becoming. Each action moves you closer to that identity. If you choose actions that reflect growth, your identity will follow. And once your identity changes, your behavior becomes natural. This is where transformation becomes stable. Because you are no longer trying to act differently. You are simply being who you have trained yourself to be. A person without limits. A person who continues to grow. A person who does not stop at old definitions. This is how a powerful identity is built. And once it is built, it supports every part of your life. It becomes the foundation of a limitless mind. Chapter 8. Living a Limitless Life. A limitless mind is not just about thinking differently. It is about living differently. It is about how you approach each day, how you respond to challenges, how you use your time and energy. Many people understand growth in theory, but they do not apply it in daily life. They return to old habits. They fall back into comfort. They forget the principles they once believed in. Living a limitless life requires consistency and application. It means your mindset is reflected in your actions. It means growth is not something you visit occasionally. It becomes part of how you live. A limitless life is not perfect. It does not remove difficulty. It does not eliminate failure. Instead, it changes your relationship with these things. Challenges are no longer barriers. They become opportunities. Failure is no longer an ending. It becomes feedback. Uncertainty is no longer something to avoid. It becomes something to explore. This shift changes everything. You stop waiting for easy paths. You become willing to walk difficult ones. You stop seeking comfort at all times. You begin to value progress more than ease. Living without barriers does not mean it means refusing to be defined by limitations that can be changed. It means recognizing that growth is always possible. Your environment may not always support you. Your circumstances may not always be ideal, but your response remains in your control. A limitless life is built through daily decisions. Small decisions that seem insignificant, but create long-term impact. Choosing to learn instead of avoid. Choosing to act instead of delay. Choosing to persist instead of quit. These choices shape your direction. Over time, they create a life that reflects your potential. Many people search for a single moment that will change everything. They wait for a breakthrough. They wait for a major opportunity. But real change happens gradually. It is built through repeated actions. Each day you eat, the difference may not be visible immediately, but over time it becomes clear. Living a limitless life also means taking ownership of your action. You do not follow paths blindly. You choose them intentionally. You define what matters to you. You set your own standards. This creates clarity. When you know what you are working toward, your actions become more focused. Distract their power. Excuses become less convincing. You begin to act with purpose. Purpose does not need to be something complex. It can begin with simple intentions. To improve, to learn, to grow. These intentions guide your behavior. They keep you aligned with your goals. A limitless life is also about resilience. You will face setbacks. You will experience moments of doubt. You will encounter obstacles. These are part of the journey. What matters is how you respond. Do you stop, or do you adjust and continue? Resilience means continuing despite difficulty. It means understanding that progress is not always smooth. There will be times when growth feels slow. There will be times when results are not visible. But consistency during these times is what creates long-term success. Example 1. A person sets a goal to improve their career. They begin learning new skills. They apply for opportunities. At first, they face rejection. Progress feels limited. It would be easy to stop, but they continue. They improve their approach. They learn from each experience. Over time, opportunities begin to appear. Their situation changes. The success was not immediate. It was built through persistence. Example 2. A person decides to improve their mindset. They begin practicing positive habits. They work on discipline and consistency. At times they feel motivated. At times they experience setbacks. But they do not return to old patterns. They continue applying what they have learned. Gradually, their thinking changes. Their actions improve. Their confidence grows. The transformation happens step by step. Living a limitless life means understanding that growth has no final point. There is always another level. There is always another skill to develop. There is always another challenge to face. This is not something to fear. It is something to embrace, because it means your potential continues to expand. A limitless mind does not settle. It continues learning. It continues improving. It continues. This does not mean constant pressure. It means continuous evolution. You allow yourself to grow at your pace. But you do not stop. You remain engaged with your development. This creates a life that feels meaningful. Not because it is easy, but because it is purposeful. You are no longer limited by old beliefs. You are no longer controlled by fear. You are no longer held back by doubt. You are guided by action. You are supported by discipline. You are driven by growth. This is what it means to live without barriers. Not a life without challenges, but a life where challenges do not define your limits. A life where your potential is explored instead of ignored. A life where you continue to move forward. No matter where you start, no matter what you face. Because you understand one simple truth. You are not fixed. You are always becoming. And that process has no limits. Chapter 9. Growth through failure. Failure is one of the most misunderstood parts of success. Most people see it as something to avoid. Something that proves weakness. Something that should never happen. Because of this belief, they fear failure. They avoid situations where they choose safety over growth. At first, this feels comfortable. But over time, it creates stagnation. When you avoid failure, you also avoid progress. Growth and failure are connected. You cannot have one without the other. Every new skill, every new challenge, every new step forward carries the risk of failure. This is not a flaw in the process. This is the process. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. It provides information. It reveals mistakes. It shows you what needs to change. Without failure, you would have no feedback. Yet many people take failure personally. They see it as a reflection of their identity. They believe it defines their ability. This is where limitation begins. When failure becomes identity, progress stops. But when failure becomes feedback, growth begins. A limitless mind understands this difference. It does not celebrate failure for its own sake, but it uses it as a tool. Each mistake becomes a lesson. Each setback becomes an opportunity to adjust. This mindset removes fear. Not because failure disappears, but because it loses its power to stop you. You begin to see failure as temporary. It is a moment, not a definition. You can learn from it. You can move forward from it. Many successful people experience repeated failure before achieving results. What separates them is not luck, it is persistence. They do not stop after one setback. They continue refining their approach. They treat failure as part of the journey. This creates resilience. Resilience is the ability to continue despite difficulty. It is built through experience. Each time you face failure and continue, you strengthen your ability to handle challenges. Over time, you become less affected by setbacks. They no longer feel overwhelming. They become manageable. This allows you to take more risks. Not reckless risks, but necessary ones. Because growth requires stepping into uncertainty. If you avoid every situation where failure is possible, you limit your potential. If you accept failure as part of learning, you expand your possibilities. Example 1. A person applies for multiple opportunities. They face rejection again and again. At first, it feels discouraging. They begin to doubt themselves. They consider stopping. But instead, they review their approach. They improve their skills. They adjust their strategy. They continue applying. Eventually, they succeed. The success did not come from avoiding failure. It came from learning through it. Example 2. An individual starts a new project. It does not go as planned. Mistakes happen. Results are disappointing. They feel frustrated. They have two choices. They can stop and accept failure as final, or they can analyze what went wrong. If they choose to learn, they identify errors. They improve their process. They try again. With each attempt, they get closer to success. Failure becomes a step forward instead of an end. Growth through failure requires a shift in perspective. You must separate yourself from the outcome. Your result does not define your worth. It reflects your current approach, and your approach can change. When you understand this, you become more willing to try. You become less afraid of mistakes. You focus on progress instead of perfection. Perfection is an unrealistic expectation. It creates pressure. It leads to hesitation. Progress, it allows mistakes. It encourages learning. It supports growth. A limitless mind chooses progress. It accepts that the path will include failure. But it also understands that each failure brings experience. Each experience builds skill. Each skill increases your chances of success. This is how growth happens. Step by step, attempt by attempt. You do not need to avoid failure. You need to use it. You need to learn from it. You need to continue after it. When you do this consistently, failure loses its negative meaning. It becomes part of your development. And once you reach this point, there is very little that can stop your progress. Because you are no longer afraid to try. And the willingness to try again is one of Chapter 10. The future of a limitless mind. The future is not something that simply happens to you. It is something that is shaped by you. Many people think the future is controlled by luck or timing or external circumstances. But the reality is more grounded. The future is built from repeated present actions. Every decision you make today is a seed. Some seeds grow quickly, some take time, but all of them shape what comes next. A limitless mind understands this clearly. It does not wait for life to improve on its own. It actively participates in creating improvement. It recognizes that small actions accumulate. One day of effort may feel insignificant, but hundreds of days of effort become transformation. This is how futures are built, not through sudden change, but through consistent direction. When you begin to think in this way, your relationship with time changes. You stop focusing only on immediate results. You start thinking long-term. You understand that growth is a process that unfolds gradually. This mindset removes impatience. Impatience often leads to quitting. It creates unrealistic expectations. It makes people abandon progress too early. But patience combined with action creates stability. A limitless mind balances both. It acts today while thinking about tomorrow. It does not delay the process. It stays engaged. The future of a limitless mind is not defined by a single achievement. It is defined by continuous expansion. There is always another level of learning, another skill to develop, another challenge to face. This ongoing growth creates a life that never becomes stagnant. You are always evolving, but this evolution requires intention. Without intention, you drift. With intention, you direct your path. Intentional living means being aware of your choices. It means asking yourself regularly, is this action taking me forward or keeping me in place? This question creates clarity. It helps you avoid distractions. It helps you stay focused on what matters. Over time, your decisions begin to align with your goals, and your goals begin to reflect your potential. Example 1. A person decides to improve their future career. They begin learning new skills consistently. They practice regularly, even when progress feels slow. At first, there is no visible change, but they continue. Months later, their skills improve. Opportunities begin to appear. Eventually, their career path changes significantly. The transformation was not sudden. It was built through consistent effort. Example 2. Another person has similar goals, but they focus only on short-term comfort. They delay learning. They avoid effort when possible. In the beginning, nothing feels different. But over time, the gap becomes clear. One person grows steadily. The other remains in the same position. The difference was not opportunity. It was consistency of action. The future is not a mystery. It is a reflection of what you repeatedly do today. A limitless mind builds a future intentionally. It does not rely on chance. It relies on effort. It does not depend on motivation. It depends on discipline. It does not wait for perfect conditions. It creates progress within current conditions. This mindset removes helplessness. You stop seeing yourself as someone waiting for change. You start seeing yourself as someone creating change. And this shift is powerful. Because it returns control to you, the future becomes something you influence. Not something you fear, not something you guess, but something you build step by step. A limitless mind does not end at achievement. It continues beyond it. Because growth does not have a final destination. It is a continuous journey. And as long as you continue to learn, continue to act, continue to improve, your future remains open, not limited, not fixed, but constantly expanding based on who you choose to become. And that is the true power of a limitless mind. Conclusion: becoming truly limitless. A limitless mind is not a destination. It is something you practice every day through your thoughts, actions, and decisions. Throughout this journey, one truth remains constant. You are not fixed. You are not defined by your past. You are not trapped by your current situation. You are not limited by what others believe about you. You are shaped by what you repeatedly think and do. Most limits in life are not physical. They are mental. They are built from fear, from doubt, from past experiences that were never challenged. And because they are mental, they can be changed. This is where your power begins. When you stop accepting every thought as truth. When you stop identifying with every failure. When you stop believing that your current state is your final form, you begin to change. A limitless mind is built through awareness. Awareness of your thoughts. Awareness of your habits. Awareness of your reactions. Once you see clearly how you operate, you gain the ability to change direction. But awareness alone is not enough. It must be followed by action. Action is what turns understanding into reality. Each time you act despite fear. Each time you continue despite doubt. Each time you choose discipline over comfort. You reshape yourself, not instantly, but gradually. This is how transformation works. Slow, consistent, and real. There is no shortcut to becoming limitless, but there is a clear path. Challenge your beliefs. Train your mind through repetition. Accept failure as part of learning. Build discipline through small daily actions. Stay consistent, even when progress feels slow. Over time, these small choices compound, and what once felt impossible becomes natural. You begin to notice changes. Fear loses control. Doubt becomes quieter. Confidence grows through experience. You stop asking whether you can and start focusing on how you will. This shift is powerful because it moves you from hesitation to action. A limitless mind does not mean you never struggle. It means you do not stop. It does not mean you never fail. It means failure does not define your direction. It does not mean life becomes easy. It means you become capable of learning, capable of adapting, capable of continuing. And that capability changes everything. Because once you realize you can grow through anything, very little can truly hold you back. The world does not become smaller. Your mind becomes stronger. And when your mind becomes stronger, Your possibilities expand. You are no longer limited by who you were yesterday. You are guided by who you are becoming. This is the essence of a limitless life, not perfection, not final success, but continuous growth, step by step, day by day, choice by choice. You build a version of yourself that refuses to stay small, and that is the real meaning of being limitless. To learn without barriers, to lead without fear, and to live without limits. The end.
Kindly subscribe to my channel.